Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to talk about a weakness that has been exploited, and it's a weakness of African nations. Now, I've been reading declassified documents by American institutions, in particular the CIA and other bodies that generate documents that initially are classified and then after several years they are declassified. And what you get from these documents is very interesting. And of course, I'm interested in content that is about Africa or documents that were generated and they are about Africa, especially the Horn of Africa, but I can say the entire of Africa. And I decided to focus on those documents because, of course, I'm an African. But again, because those documents happen to be the least looked at for the most part. Documents that talk about incidences in the US, let's say the assassination of JF. Of course, the Americans are going to look at those documents, or Martin Luther King. But documents that talk about events in Africa are not that much looked at, and I decided I'm going to look at those documents, and then I share whatever I get with people here. Now, reading through these documents, there is a trend that has stood out for me, and almost every document that the CIA or any other body, Secret Service or whatever institution in the US generates about Africa that is classified, seems like these documents cannot avoid to talk about the tribes in African nations. If they are talking about a situation in Nigeria, for example, recently I did a video where I looked at documents that were talking about events that happened after the coup of 1975 or during the coup of 1975 in Nigeria. Then I noticed that that document has to talk about the tribe thing in Nigeria. If it's a document that talks about events in Somalia, it has to talk about the tribe thing. But of course, Somalia is unique, so sort of unique when you compare it to the rest of Africa, and I'm going to explain how. Now, I saw this, or I've seen so much of this, and I'm wondering why is it that when a document is generated by the CIA, for example, about Kenya, or even Kenya, I saw the same thing, Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, Nigeria. I've seen most of the documents I've looked at are documents that speak about those countries. They have to talk about this tribe and that tribe. And then at some point, I had a light bulb moment and I realized, oh, the reason that is so is because there is a use for that, especially by the American establishment. To the American establishment, when dealing with Africa, it is useful to understand who is the enemy of who, and who can be the enemy of who, and who, when they hold power, who feels aggrieved by that, and who wants to hold power against who. It's so important for the American establishment to have that, and that's why in their documents, and these are documents, of course, that are generated not to be consumed by the public. These are documents, for example, generated by an ambassador to be consumed by the Secretary of State. So it's one person to another. And that characterization of the African society is important. Is like, these people are reminding themselves, if you are going to Nigeria, then you need to understand that this tribe needs power or wants to be in power, and this other one will feel aggrieved, or this other one feels like this about this other tribe. And the reason for that, I realize, is because then that becomes the weak point. That becomes the leverage. That becomes the place where the American foreign policy can come in and run things the way they want. For example, they have a problem with a president of a certain African country. Then you go in there and there is the tribe of the president. And then there are other tribes, of course. And then you go in and you tell the others, or you stoke trouble, or you just plant ideas into the other people, other groups, which can easily be done through donor, through funding and things like that. And that's another thing that I've realized, that there's a document I read where I realized that how the US gives out money for, you can say, charity. It's not just because there is need, it's because there is need for the interest of the American government. Now, if America has a problem with a certain president in a certain African country, they can just channel money into some civil society groups, and then there will be issues. And then people from the tribe that is not his will start bringing up issues, will start feeling they are not part of the government or things like that, then there will be trouble, and then that person is removed from power either through a coup or through an election or through other means. And so I realized the reason why there is so much focus on tribe in those documents is because of that. Now, and it works. It has worked since 1960s, and it works to date. We Africans run our politics along ethnicity, ethnic grouping, and that is the weak point in how the rest of the world deals with us, in particular the Americans and, of course, the Europeans. They always find that so useful because it so easily works. They want to get rid of a president or they want to blackmail them, then they will fund opposition, and it's so easy to fund opposition that is based on ethnic feelings, not actually policy. Now, let's talk about Somalia. Somalia, as I've said, is a unique African country, and it's unique because it's one of the few African countries that are homogeneous to a large extent. It's ethnically homogeneous, it is culturally homogeneous, it is religiously homogeneous. One of the very few. Of course, we can talk of the countries to the north. We can talk of Egypt, we can talk of Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria. They are also sort of or kind of homogeneous to a large extent, but of course they are also of different stock, we can say. Somalia is more of what we can call the sub-Saharan group of countries, and of course it's a different kind of people who live in that part of the world. But Somalia is unique in those ways. It is very homogeneous, and very few other African countries are that homogeneous. Maybe we can talk of Rwanda, but even then, what happened in Somalia has happened in Rwanda, even though Rwanda is very homogeneous. We can talk of Burundi, we can talk of Swaziland and Lesotho. Those countries are very homogeneous, and a few others. Now, while Somalia is very homogeneous, it has also become one of the most destabilized because of ethnicity, which is very interesting. Well, because there were no tribes in Somalia, the focus went into clans. And when you read the American documents, I remember I was reading one document about the coup against Siad Barre, an attempted coup that happened in 1978. And there was talk of the clans, of course, the Maherans, the Darod, and things like that. And some of these things feel like they are from the ground, but one thing I've come to realize is so easy to plant ideas on the ground, and those ideas take sort of organic growth. And so it's so interesting to see how Somali politics, because there was no tribe, they so easily fell into the clan politics. And Somali tribe, like most African tribes, have clans. You can talk of any tribe in Africa, it has clans. Now, in countries or in tribes that are not actually a nation state, clan is no big deal. People don't even think about it. People don't even talk about it. People don't even bring it up. Sometimes it does come up in local politics, but it's not that big of a deal. But then when you go to Somalia, clan becomes such a big deal, Now, in Somalia, clan takes the place of tribe that is in Kenya. In Kenya, of course, Kenyan politics is so tribal-based, of course. And in Kenya, we talk of tribe. And when you talk of tribe, these are people who speak different languages, have different cultures, and sometimes they have different religious beliefs to some extent. Now, in Somalia, it's the clan. And that's so interesting. And to me, it's interesting, especially after reading these documents. My thinking has always been, we Africans are tribal in the way we do our politics, and then if it's Somalia, it's a clan-based, and I thought that is organic. But the more I'm reading this document, I'm realizing maybe it's not organic. Maybe it's part of a divide and rule strategy that is from external forces. That could be, to me, that seems like very likely that these politics of tribe are encouraged by forces that come from outside, because these forces, for some weird reason, or we can say these outsiders, for the weird reason, they always want to understand which tribe is against which tribe. Like every document you read about Africa or an African nation, they have to talk of, the president comes from this tribe and this other tribe, or the president did this appointment from this tribe, and then this tribe is not satisfied. That's how they put it. And that one document, you'd be like, okay. But then when you read every document and about different African countries, then you start being suspicious, like why is that so? So Somalia is like a warning to the rest of Africa, because the country that you would not have expected to have that problem, Somalia is one that is that country. Like, you would not have expected Somali politics to be so tribal, because come on, these are culturally, ethnically, religiously homogeneous people, but then it's able to be done. The same case to Rwanda. Rwanda is basically so homogeneous. The differences between the people don't even make sense when you think about it. They speak the same language. They have the same religion for the most part. Culture is the same. They live the same lifestyle, but then, and they don't even have separate land. They basically live together, neighbors here and there, but then for some weird reason, it worked, and people ended up killing one another in very large numbers. So, yeah, so our weak point is the tribe thing and ethnic thing, and in my opinion, this is a leverage that is often used from outside. Those are my random thoughts.